On COVID, we have a total, as of this moment, of 1,504 cases, confirmed cases. We're describing the current situation in the city as a bit of a rising tide. We've had 42 cases over the past 7 days. It puts us at about 9.1 cases per 100,000 people. When we last spoke, we were on 7.2 cases, or 7.8 cases per 100,000 people. So you can see it's slow and it's plateau, but it's edging in the wrong direction. And as I've shared numerous times, it is a cause for concern, but it's not a cause for alarm. We should be concerned because we have a pandemic, and we do not yet have a vaccine, and the consequences of getting up around 20 cases per 100,000 when you really get onto the government's radar, and then moving up to 40, where some of the cities have ended up back in lockdown. The consequences are severe, obviously, for individuals with the virus, but also the economic consequences as well. So we are concerned, but we're not alarmed. Our message has been to continue with the practices we've asked people to engage in, namely keep up with the hygiene and keep up with the social distancing. These are incredibly important to us, and we're asking people to take responsibility. The second area is back to school. Number of people starting this week. In my own family, we start next week, but we're expecting 60,000 children around about there to be returning to school. We want to start by acknowledging anxiety and concern among families that may be out there, but also that families will be desperate. A number will be desperate for children to go back to school, because we know the full role that school plays. It is about education, but it's also about structure, and it's so critical for family dynamics as well. So for parents needing to get back to work, it's been one of the issues that a number of the big employers have pointed out, that childcare is going to be an issue of huge significance for us over the coming weeks as we try to get the economy moving. We also recognise the concerns of teachers and school staff as well, and we've been meeting with school leads since the very beginning of the pandemic. Was really on us large to, one, look at the consequences of children not being in school at that point in time, digital exclusion, education inequalities, hunger, child safety at home, but also to begin thinking through, well, what does that transition back into school look like? So we recognise the concerns, but we're also at pains to point out that with our public health expertise and with the expertise in our schools, and obviously national guidance as well, we've done all within our power to minimise any risks that our children may, and teachers and staff may face. We're also stressing the importance of children attending school during those first few days. It's during those first few days that the schools will really be sharing with the children how they need to be conducting themselves to keep themselves, their peers, teachers, staff, and then obviously the families they go back to as safe as possible. And we're urging people as much as they're able to please also for parents and carers to familiarise themselves with the school guidelines as well, so they can reinforce those with the children. And economic recovery, again, it's just something we're particularly obviously exercised about in the city. I mean, for our part, we have done our best. Our latest numbers are that we paid 7,211 grants out to businesses. That is a total of over £92 million. 876 applications were approved for discretionary grants, and over £2.4 million in support aid. So as a local authority, we have really, and the team here, it's down to the team and the organisation, have worked incredibly hard to get the money out the door. But we are facing challenges coming up with a potential winter surge, the wider impacts of economic slowdown. We've seen the government introducing quarantines on new areas as well. A number of industries, particularly aerospace as well, talking about recovery taking to 2026. So we really need to prepare, both in terms of how we try to get that government investment in our big infrastructure projects, retrofitting homes, and the support programs in place around evictions and furloughs, for example, to support people where they are right now. But we do want to bring forward those big infrastructure investment projects so we can really ignite the economy, get our skills base lined up, and make sure that the economic development we have is inclusive as possible. And the more planning we can do for it, the more inclusive and local we can make that economic multiplier. Okay, so please just send to me ask me any questions you have, and I'll leave it to Saskia to broker the order.
Super. Well, Paul, you're not on mute, so do you want to go first?
Blimey, you've been hearing me clicking away on my mouse. Yeah, could I just ask about the clean air zone plans going forward? 2 questions. I'll ask you them separately. The first is, what's your reaction to the government having ruled out having any sort of outright diesel ban?
Sorry, I've just got to unmute myself. It is what it is, but what we found, in some sense, I don't mind. What we were looking for is the solution that got us to compliance in the shortest possible time. And actually what we have on the table now, even with the non-charging option, is an approach that could get us to compliance faster than the option we had with the diesel ban, particularly in light of the changes to transport that's happened over recent months. I must admit, there was a little bit of, it was interesting because when I first talked to the minister, they were very keen on it. They described it as brave, which is code for, I'm glad you're doing it, not me, but we'd still like you to do it anyway. And subsequently, after, being very encouraging, then, they've come up with the position they've come up with. But we think that if we can come up with a non-charging means of getting us to compliance, that is the best for everyone, because it avoids us adding additional financial pressure on households and businesses at the very time that they are most going to be needing financial support and stability.
And on that count, how confident can you be that a non-charging model, so having no charges for any vehicles whatsoever coming into Bristol, that you can, in the long term, achieve an ongoing compliance? It's one thing when the economy is effectively squashed because we're in semi-lockdown. It's another thing when the economy is back up and fully running again.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't like to put a number on that or anything, Paul. I mean, we wouldn't be pursuing it if it wasn't a possibility, and government wouldn't be supporting us to pursue the non-charging option if it wasn't possible to deliver it. But at the same time, the reason we are continuing to pursue the medium area CAS-C and the small area CAS-D is because we recognise there's risk in everything, and it might not work out. So we've got the backstops there, which we would be legally bound to do, but would not be our preferred option because it brings additional financial challenges to households and businesses as we go into an economic depression in the country. So I think at the moment what we've got is the best approach possible. We've got the backstops, but we're pursuing the best possible option is the non-charging method of delivering compliance.
Thank you.
Ellie, do you want to go next?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi, can I just ask really for your thoughts on the potential fallout with schemes such as furlough coming to an end, and to what extent the council can help mitigate against that and prepare for whatever's going to come next?
So I've asked the executives in Bristol City Council to be mapping out all of those kind of anchor dates and stroke cliff edges we've got coming up, so we can prepare, we can ready our response before they happen rather than after. And I've actually extended that to every Wednesday at 12:30. We have a city leaders call, university, City of Bristol College, First Bus. So we're all doing that as well, so that we have a collective idea as a city about where all these cliff edges are. So we are doing our best to prepare for that. There's a very real and raw challenge to our ability to make up for that, because it takes finance. And we have a big COVID hit, 15 million pound in our budget now already because of what we've done. This is a further COVID hit that we're not sure government are going to be open to supporting us to meet. Again, I keep talking about the absence of certainty from national government, and it's in this area as well. So we don't always know what they're going to do, whether they're going to, support scheme going forward until you know yourselves, and often the press know before we are, because it's a press release first before they tell local government. So it is something I'm very concerned about. We know that the worst consequences of the economic downturn we're being sheltered from those at the moment by that financial cover we've had from central government. The consequences of it just being lifted, joblessness, people not being able to pay their rents, if it comes at the same time as the removal of protections against evictions, we can see a whole lot of trouble coming our way. So we'll just keep lobbying government. I did actually talk to Acorn today about us reaching out with the other core cities to government on to extend the support against evictions, but we'll see what we can work out.
And if there is no further financial support from government for the council, what then? What's the likely sort of scenario for Bristol?
Well, it makes it very difficult.
Okay.
Be perfectly frank, that's it. I mean, we do all we can, and we did all we could through COVID, and the promise from government was do what you need to do and we'll cover you. Well, they haven't quite made up for the loss of revenue and increase in costs, have they? So it would just make it incredibly difficult, but not just for us. It'd be difficult for the health service, it'd be difficult for the police, and it would be difficult for business in the city. So hopefully we'll be able to map out, we'll be able to work with government to map out, how we're going to keep our people safe.
Okay, thanks. If I can just ask one more question on a different topic. Prince Street Bridge, there's renewed calls for that to be pedestrianised or made not accessible through traffic following the closure at the weekend. Just wondered if you give me your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, well, we're not, when we think about what we close, it's done in line with a strategy that looks at the people's movement around the city. We can't approach these things as single issue. I think we've done pretty sterling work on Bristol Bridge, pedestrianisation of the old city, increased active travel areas in Bristol. So we do still have to maintain access between the north and the south of the city, and the bridges are important to that end. So we certainly listen to people's ideas and take them into account, but we have to model the impact it will have on people's lives before we do it. And we're constantly trying to do the higher wire act of keeping our economy going, because it's jobs and business, and that's very important to people's ability to pay bills, while at the same time trying to decarbonise the consequences of our economic activity, and make sure our economic activity isn't giving us filthy air to breathe. So we'll take the suggestion on, and it will form part of the asks that the transport team grapple with.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, you're desperate to go.
Hi everyone. Hi Marvin. It's about office work. And what's your message to Bristol City Council workers about returning back to your offices? So what's your message, and do you have any idea at the moment just how many office staff are working back in their traditional offices or working from home? What the situation is? Across
the city, or?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I haven't seen any numbers on that yet. We actually, it'd be good to switch this around with the leaders call, actually. So after this, then I am on a call with Chamber of Commerce, universities, a number of those key sectors. So we'll get a sense in that call of just how many people are returning to the offices. I think my message is that certainly from the council is that what we are doing is we will take people back in as we can make sure that the work places are safe. People are able to social distance and engage in their behaviours that we need them to. So, and from the calls and the connections we have with other businesses, that's what people will be looking at. Clearly, there are going to be some places that don't take any notice of that. We recognise that, which is why we have unions and enforcement powers. But we will, the responsible employers I know are trying to take care of their workforce, because a sick workforce and a sick city is no good for business.
And within the city, and so within the city council as well, do you have any idea as to how, among all the offices you have across, as the authority has across the city, how you're faring? Are there still offices that are effectively mothballed, or
I wouldn't use the term mothballed, but I'm in City Hall and it's not full, put it that way. It's my British understatement. Our floor is very empty. We have a one-way system going around the building. We have hand sanitizer, around about the place as well. So we're not running. We haven't got the committee rooms being used by people as we normally would have. It'd be quite a buzzing building. So we're taking it steady in the name of taking care of our staff and demonstrating good practice at the moment. But we do have a plan to bring people back in. I think we'll be looking for higher numbers after Christmas in the authority.
Thanks. And obviously we've also got a lot of frontline workers who are out and about and who haven't stopped being out and about and have done a brilliant job.
It's a good point, actually. Yeah, there is that white collar, blue collar divide that people have talked about as well, about getting back into the workforce. So, and we employ people right across that spectrum.
Daniel, you've got a question?
Thank you. Yeah, hi Marvin. It's a question about Bristol Energy. It was revealed last week that the man who ran the firm, Marek Majewicz, was paid a salary of £228,000 last year. And then on top of that, he was paid nearly £100,000 as a payoff when he left. I wonder what justification you would say there is for that when the company that he ran made a £32 million loss.
Yeah, I think you just have to be very careful, Daniel, when you talk about that 228, because there are a number of elements to that, including pension strain. So it can mislead people if you just say that is a salary that someone was getting without.
What about the payoff then?
Well, can I just say it is important. Yeah, it is important to not conflate that all into one. There was a payment for departure. There is a pension strain, and there's a salary, and it is important, yeah, because otherwise we end up people not understanding what's going on in the city. But it's one of the dilemmas we have when we have our own company is that they are their own companies. There are times I'd like to intervene in a company that we own, and I have to be careful about that because it has its own board. We are the shareholder, but a board makes decisions, about that company. And it's around Bristol Energy, as I've shared many a times. It wasn't a sector we should have got into as a local authority. It's expensive to get into. It's expensive to operate in. It's expensive to get out of. And it's a level of expertise that wasn't necessarily readily available at the fingertips of local authorities to how to operate in that market. So I recognise these numbers are high. They're high in relation to me and members of my family in the community I come from. I just regret that we're in the energy business at all.
Thank you. Just on a completely separate note, I wondered if you have any kind of update at all to the Bristol Arena plans. Is the council still waiting for final approval from the Secretary of State for the planning?
That ship sailed some time ago. What aspects are you talking about, Daniel? Are you talking about Temple Island? Are you talking about YTL?
YTL.
Oh, well, they're going ahead with their work. It's not something I'm driving or on the back of. They're a private company putting their own finances at risk to build the arena. It's not Bristol City Council project. And as I said before, in many ways, if you're doing a story on that, it is worth potentially running through the scenario. If we had borrowed £160 million and we were trying to open an arena at this moment in time, what would be happening to our finance? We'd still be making our debt repayments. There would be no events going on there. And it would have been, you'd be writing a story about a £160 million empty building in the middle of the city. The point we made was it's too much risk for us to borrow that level of money for as a local authority and build an arena in the middle of the city. And we've now, no one could have foreseen a pandemic, but we did foresee the potential of risk. So I think we haven't heard much of that kind of what would have happened scenario, but I think it's worth running through because I think it shows that we did actually make the right decision.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Adam, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Leslie. Hi, Marvin. Hi, everybody. Talking about back to school. Obviously, as you say, many parents will be anxious, children may well be anxious, and teachers. The ability to find parents for absentee children is obviously at the behest of schools and head teachers. I just wonder what your personal feelings was if a parent did feel that they weren't happy, weren't comfortable with sending their child back to school because of COVID. What's your personal feelings on if a school finds a parent for truancy?
Well, that I think that's quite a finely balanced issue because the truth of it is the school will be in a better position to understand what's going on in the life of those children and those families and those parents than I am. And I really think it would depend on the circumstances. If a head teacher sees that a family is genuinely agonizing over this and it's very real, that they may choose to take a more lenient line. I don't know how much discretion they have in some sense for doing so, but that might be a line they take. A head teacher may know of a family and think actually, and sometimes there are issues in families. For example, we talked about children for whom home is not the safest place, and they may think that actually this is not a legitimate. These are not legitimate concerns, and actually they're undermining the safety of the child. So I really think it varies too much, and as I've said from the start, it's best for us to work with and back the expertise of our schools and the teachers.
Thank you very much. A quick question, follow up on a completely different subject. Have you made a decision about who will replace Councillor Paul Smith as Cabinet Member for Housing?
You're at the traps quickly there, aren't you, Adam? We'll have discussions about that now, but you will be one of the first to know.
Thanks a lot.